introduction. It makes me nervous now because I did kind of change things up a little bit. I'm like, man, I should be stepping under. I'm going low tech today. No PowerPoints, nothing. I've actually got a handout for you that basically you could read it and get everything I'm saying. I did that on purpose, so please don't sit there and read it. I'm going to pass it out here in a second, but I did that on purpose because I hope that I say a few things that maybe can be helpful to you, that you can look back at this handout and kind of see, maybe review what I was talking about, or whatever. So, but I wanted to start by just really saying thank you. I went back, I have been several times now, and I've actually really fallen in love with this organization. I went back this week just in preparation for this today and re-looked at the website, and I'm blown away by this organization and the focus that you have, the mission. Again, I've been in the business of working in the child welfare industry for over 30 years, and I can tell you, I think this organization is hitting a sweet spot that is absolutely right on. So the mission statement, understanding that, and you'll hear, this is exactly what I'm going to talk about today. The vision of this organization is, or the idea behind it, I don't remember if it was a vision statement or not, but just that the best thing we can do for young people, especially those who are struggling, who are maybe have been traumatized by abuse and neglect or just dynamics, there's nothing more important than giving them a meaningful connection with an appropriate adult. That's it. If we can do that, and the fact that you're committed to doing that over 6 years, you as mentors making a long-term commitment like that, I can think of nothing, literally. I'm a therapist, I've done family therapy, nothing that I can say to you would work as effectively as doing that. Connecting with kids and staying with them over a long period of time, giving them an anchor of an adult relationship that is meaningful and connected. Nothing can do better for them than that, in terms of literally healing their brain. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I brought my brain today. Hopefully your brain isn't taped up like this one is. But again, I was looking at the website. I looked at the 2017 annual report. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that. I'm a kind of geeky guy about organizations. I love seeing the numbers and the dynamics, the business side of things and everything else. But you've got on your website that in 2017, you spent 59,940 hours in mentoring. Did y'all know that as mentors? You were part of that, right? Probably. Have all of you been here since 2017? Or y'all, several of you at least? Some of you are newer. So you'll be in the 2018 numbers or the 2019 numbers. 1,300 hours of community service. This is what the youth did, I suppose, which is incredible. Again, not only are you pouring into them, but you're teaching them to give back, to look outside themselves, which in my opinion, having worked with traumatized people all of my career, the hardest thing for them to do is to get healed up enough inside that they can begin to look outside themselves. We get so, as we deal with our own trauma, we get so focused on our own needs that sometimes we get stuck. And what we need is to turn outward and go, I'm going to go out and serve others. I need to stop staring at my navel and go work with somebody else. And so I love, again, the combination that you're providing these kids to have that mentoring and that relationship and giving them time to focus on their own healing, but also giving them opportunities to serve the community. And then this is just a cool one, 11,280 miles covered during your summer wilderness trips. So again, you're getting these youth out of their little community, out of their little place where maybe they are struggling, and you're giving them an opportunity. And here's the big word that I've actually been studying a bunch recently and doing some teaching on, and that is the word hope. It's a word we overuse, but it is critically important, right? And one of the things that I've seen in the research over and over is one of the greatest ways to give kids hope is to expose them to something that draws them, like exposing them to a new place, wilderness, or taking them overseas and letting them do mission work, or letting them do some kind of community work, where they can see a different part of the world and begin to develop a vision for themselves, like, maybe I can make a difference, or maybe I could learn to do whatever, rock climbing, hiking, spelunking, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Just something that hooks them to a future of hope, that draws them forward in their life, can make all the difference for these kids that we work with. So thank you so much. Who all are mentors? I think I've figured out who all you are. But, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for doing the work. I know it's a tremendous commitment you've made, and it can be hard. So let's go ahead and pass these out. I would ask that you hang with me and don't just read the deal. I did want to spend a moment. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because literally I could spend the next several days. We could sit here and talk about brain development. But I did want to bring my little brain here and just say a few things about it. Hopefully you may have already heard this. But again, having been in this business a lot of years, I've been in it long enough that I was in it before we learned a lot about how our brains develop and what trauma does, what life experiences do to the literal development of the brain. And so because of that, 15, 20 years ago, we made a lot of mistakes that I believe hurt kids, hurt youth that we worked with, because we didn't understand that their life experiences had literally rewired their brain. And so we thought they were just being rebellious. And so guess what we did? We created boot camps. We created very authoritarian, very by-the-book, rule-oriented interactions with them. We thought the way to get them to do things was to force them into compliance, because we thought they were being just rebellious, bad kids, you know. And we didn't do this on purpose. I mean, we thought we were doing the right thing, right? That's what the research at that time was telling us. But now we know that something incredible happens when a child is first born. You have this cycle that happens. Again, I got to make myself go fast here, but when a baby is born, when each one of us is born, obviously we come into the world with needs, right? So what happens when a baby has a need? What typically happens? They cry, right? They start crying. That's how they let us know they have a need. So if there's an adult in their life who cares about them, they respond to that need. So what happens when we have a need is we have all of these things that happen, chemicals that go off in our bodies. They've got fancy names, you know, and we not only are there chemicals, but there are things that happen in our nervous system. So we have all this excitatory, they're called excitatory neurons, and excitatory things that start happening in this brain, right? And so the brain is really fascinating, and I've drawn a little circle in here, but the base of the brain, like right back here, is what's called the reptilian brain. It's where, you know, before any of the rest of this develops, you have this reptilian thing. It's called the amygdala. And that's where we get fight, flight, and freeze. You've probably heard those terms before. So basically what that means, if you don't have any other brain development, when there's a saber-toothed tiger running at you, you know to freak out and try to run, right? I mean, that's kind of what the amygdala does. Or you freeze and hide behind the rock. Or you figure out, just in a very instinctual way what to do. So all of these excitatory chemicals happen when there's a need. So then if in the right situation, then this child has a caring adult who meets the need. We pick up the baby, we rock them, we feed them, we change their diaper, whatever. We burp them if they've got indigestion. And so they go, oh gosh. And they come around here and we have what's called inhibitory things that begin to happen. So what that means is these new chemicals are released that calm us. That the baby goes, oh, okay. So what's happening emotionally when I do that? What? I feel safe. Absolutely. Pardon me?
You relax.
I relax. I feel safe. Yes. And so I build this. Trust. And trust does come out of a feeling of safety. That's where we get it. And so then we just keep in this. This cycle happens thousands of times a day. With the baby and with you and me, still as adults, right? So, again, as long as the need gets met, you stay in this cycle, and this gets stronger and stronger. So what comes out of trust then, over time, a baby begins to have a sense that, okay, this person that I'm staring at is okay. And then as they get a little bit older, their view widens, right? So that then they begin to say, not only is this person okay, but now Laura's okay, the sitter or the friend or the aunt, who comes in, and she takes care of me sometimes, and she's okay. I get this same sense of I'm okay, and then, so you see what I'm getting at, right? So what's happening up here in the brain during all of this is that there's all these, up in the brain, there's all these neural pathways that have these intersections, and at first these look just like little tiny lines, right? And so there's all these lines that are coming up from the base of the brain, they're going out into these other areas of the brain where we do our higher level thinking, our emotions, all those parts of the brains involve those things. So as we get this trusting feeling, some of these neural pathways get wider and stronger. So they become what I would call a superhighway neural pathway. So then you've got really secure trust, right? So, but guess what? What happens if the need comes up, I come here, and it does not get met? Time and time again. Pardon me?
You lose trust.
You lose what?
Trust.
You lose trust. Absolutely. So, yeah, every time I cry, my caregiver doesn't come to help me. Or maybe my caregiver even comes and hurts me. They hurt, they throw hot water on me, they slap me, and again, as you get older, those things change. But let's just, I could go into a lot more detail, but let's just say that doesn't happen, and you're exactly right. So what happens is this gets interrupted, the need never gets met, and so the child then develops distrust, right? And the neural pathways, what happens is these neural pathways that lead to trust and to higher level thinking, they don't get developed. And it's literally, that's what's happening in the brain. So when they show a brain of a traumatized child, this section down here will be lit up. Literally lit up. They have images now with all the fancy equipment. And this part of the brain will be dark. It'll have a little bit of light. It'll be dark. Whereas in a normal child, all of this will be lit up when they do a brain scan. So what happens is, so what that means is when you're out there with a youth on the side of the river or wherever you are, and something happens that creates stress, so you can call this stress, this need. Something stressful happens, and that can be a loud noise. It triggers in them. So, it can be anything. You never know necessarily until you get to know this child, this youth, what it is that has triggered them. But they will be triggered, and this stress will go through the ceiling. And so basically what happens is if this process occurs where they haven't gotten the need met and the neural pathways, basically what ends up happening is what's called complex trauma, which is, I've got the definition of it for you here. It's the experience of multiple chronic and prolonged developmentally adverse traumatic events, most often of an interpersonal nature. So we're talking about the trauma is relationship-based, so therefore that's where it's going to be hardest to work it out, is in the relationships. So I put on there that what that does is it compromises this person's ability to attach and to have human companionship. That's the bottom line. Again, there's a whole lot of science behind it and a whole lot of other things we could talk about. But the bottom line is this person who is now here's the terrible part is that the trauma can actually be, it doesn't always have to be bad parenting or bad adults. It can be undiagnosed illnesses that go on for a long time, a super painful ear infection that parents don't catch for months, and the child suffers with pain. That can cause some of this to a degree. And so we've learned a lot about that. What constitutes trauma. It can even start happening in the womb before you're ever born. If your mom is under huge stress, this can begin to happen. So, but here's the good news. So, first let me say the rest of that, and then I'll tell you the good news. So, what happens, again, you're on the side of the river with this youth. They've been triggered. So what's going on is they live, if you think of it on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being I'm perfectly calm and I feel safe and I have a huge level of trust. 10 being I am freaking out with stress. I don't know what to do to help myself, and my head's about to pop off. I'm about to hit somebody, run, freeze, or fight, or freeze. This person who's not had their needs met, they live between about an 8 and a 10 all the time. So they don't come down here a lot, if ever. So when some event happens, you say something to them, you tell them no for something, they go, it looks like their top blows really fast, but it's because they're always kind of up at the top of that scale of distrusting, of not feeling like adults are going to be straight with them, of feeling like, yeah, I'm just waiting for you to do something to hurt me or to not meet my need. So they're kind of living that sort of fight, flight, or freeze, really close to that reaction at all times, right? So the youth that you're having the most, tell me a little bit about what are the most difficult moments for you with some of the youth you work with? Can you think of like?
Well, I love and so appreciate what you're saying, and just kind of what came to mind for me was we went on canoeing this summer in Arkansas, and this is probably like maybe a notch level down from what you're talking about, but we have the girls who always help out. They just immediately, whether it's their job or not, and then we have the girls who just no, like they don't want to pack up the canoe. Oh, they'll do that for me, and then it's kind of like a pattern of like the girls who overwork, and then the girls who don't want to. And I find myself, and this is something I'm absolutely committed to working on, like being so frustrated with the girls who won't help out, and then like feeling empathy for the girls who are always, no, it's okay, I'll just do it. It'll help us just go and get on the, get on the river, and like I don't want to be caught in that like relational dynamic with them of just being like this, and so it's like. And I get, like, I'm a big fan of Bruce Perry, so it's like love can heal trauma. So it's like, how in that moment, what's the right way to show love, right? What's the right kind of practical things to do? Yeah. That's just something I struggle with as a mentor.
Good, because I think what I'm going to say in just a minute will be right at that.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, anyone else, kind of where you struggle? An example of that, maybe?
I mean, I'm not a mentor, obviously, but one thing that I've heard probably 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years is like, I don't know what to do or how to help them when they won't talk to me.
Yes.
That seems to be a kind of recurring theme. Absolutely. Like kids on trips just shut down, won't talk to their mentors at all.
Well, that's what I really want to go after for the next few minutes. But I'm only introducing, I want to give a little bit of a caveat, not a little bit, a big caveat. I wanted to start with this idea about trauma and the impact on the brain, not because I'm implying that all of your kids have been terribly traumatized. Mm-hmm. I mean, all of us have a level of trauma, every one of us. Some of us more than others, even those of you who are mentors and staff. The only reason I'm telling you about this is that we've all been impacted by some level of trauma. Some of the kids you're working with have probably had bigger doses of that, but either way, the science behind this is the same, and that is that what helps these kids to get, whether they've been horribly traumatized or not, what helps them get past that barrier of not trusting you as an adult or whatever. Sometimes kids have just been poorly parented and they're kind of self-centered and they're not helpful because they've never been asked to help around the house, and so some of it's that. It doesn't have anything to do with trauma. It has to do with just they've not been taught to be responsible. But I think the responses from us are the same. And the good news that I want you to know, even as I've said all this about trauma, and you may be thinking of a child or two you work with who you can say, oh, I know they've been horribly traumatized by their family or by something. The good news is that all this stuff we're talking about can be reversed. We've found out now that our brains have plasticity, which means they can heal. These highways that look like little dirt roads now with ruts in them can be built back up into superhighways by having, guess what? A meaningful relationship with someone like you. That's what literally begins to rebuild the neural pathways in their brains. As they experience that with you, it's just like they would have when they were being held. They've studied it, and the distance from my eye to the baby's eye is perfect for the vision the baby has when they're first born. Isn't that incredible? So just this, going from here, the same kind of dynamics can still happen with you as you're interacting with these kids on the side of the river. That's the cool thing about it. For me, as someone who's been in the business a long time, it's extraordinarily hopeful because for a while before I learned all this, I was like, I got to go sell cars or something because this is not fun. Because I didn't have a lot of hope that certain kids, we didn't know how to help them sometimes. So let me move on to more of the practical stuff. Basically, talking about this idea of complex trauma and the idea that what it leads to is fear and anxiety, behavioral dysregulation, which is a fancy word for they act out. They act like turkeys, right? And then that in turn impacts their ability to attach, to have relationships with people, you and others in their lives, which you can see all of those lead to not a very hopeful future for them in the world. So the 3 pillars, they call them the 3 pillars of trauma-informed care. So if we're going to care for these kids in the right way, here's the three pillars. And I'm going to kind of move through these quickly because I do want to get to more of the just practical things to how to respond. I'll do some of that as we go here. But the first pillar is safety. So somebody obviously knows their stuff who said, we want safety. Here's the tricky part, though. It's not just safety like, I know you're safe. Like when you're with a youth in a canoe and you've got their life jacket on and you're a professional rowing person, whatever, technically speaking, they're safe, right? But the important part is what's called felt safety. So the youth has to feel the safety. So you may have all the conditions set up where you're thinking, we're perfectly okay, and yet you've got a youth who looks terrorized, right? Have you ever had that? Has anyone ever had that experience?
Rock climbing.
Rock climbing. Sure. Absolutely. They're safe, and yet they don't have felt safety at that point. So one of the things that we want to do as we care for youth is to help them move closer to that felt safety. We'll talk about how to do that. For example, a couple of ways, very practical things. And these are stuff I'm going to share with you. You're going to go, well, yeah, it's such common sense, and yet it's so powerful to do it. First thing I want to say, and this is in all my points, and that is your voice. Your voice and encouraging their voice. But let me separate those two. Your voice tone and quality is super important with kids. You already know that, I'm sure. But no matter what your words are, the tone of your words and your facial expression goes with it. That's what they look at more. That's what they respond to more. So if you're saying everything's okay, but your face looks terrorized, or you're saying I'm okay with you right now, but you're looking like I'd like to knock you upside the head, they will pick up on that. So your voice tone is really important. So when you're talking them through instructions of something you're about to do, whether it's rock climbing or something, the tone of your voice and your overall body posture are super important. So if you're just like, okay, that's how they're going to feel inside, except times 10 if there's somebody who's got some trauma and other things going on. So you being able to be aware of your body and your tone of voice is super important. The other part in all of this is what we call giving kids voice, and that is everything I'm going to talk about is about respecting and helping them find their voice. So by that I mean asking them, what do you need right now? One of my favorite questions I ask a kid is just, what do you need right now? Not many adults ask them that, believe it or not. It sounds like such a simple question. But if you'll just take time, no matter how bad things are freaking out, to just turn and say, what do you need right now? Or what's your perception of what's going on here? What do you think's going on? Maybe they want to understand what's your perception, but most kids do, most teenagers do. Taking time, I have found, I've worked with kids who were literally going off so bad that everybody else had cleared the room. I'll never forget this with one teenager. He was, had been real physical with people. He was in the room. He was pacing around. He was throwing furniture, and I just walked up and I sat on the edge of a couch, and I just said, tell me your perception of what happened a minute ago. And he immediately didn't immediately calm down, but very quickly he hesitated, just like, wow, nobody's asked me that. And then he was able to tell his side of the story. And even though I didn't have to agree with his side, I may have seen him hit the other kid, but I still, just to take the time to say, what in your perception happened? And he may tell me what I didn't realize was the kid whispered something really tacky under his breath before he hit. So anything like, just checking their perception, taking a moment to give their voice a chance to come out. Most adults go straight to a punitive response, and they don't take time to go, tell me what you need, tell me what you're perceiving right now. Does that make sense? So that's one of the things we do that creates safety. And the way that creates safety for the youth is that they begin to trust that you are someone who's going to give them, who respects them, basically, right? I mean, who of us does not want someone to just listen to us, even if we're wrong, just to give us a chance to tell our part of the story? And I sometimes want that with my wife and my kids. You know, it's like, just give me a chance to say something here before you get so mad at me or whatever. Okay. Any questions about that? The other thing I listed under safety is just predictability. Again, this is stuff y'all already know. I'm sure you learned it in your mentor training. But that is so critically important, that you be predictable with the youth, that you not be up and down and all around as much as you can. I mean, we're human. We're going to have days where we're in a bad mood and we're not as patient or not as friendly in our voice tone. But still, the predictability part to me, like with my sons, I blow it a lot with them. But what I think they would say about me that's predictable is I'll repair as quickly as I can. Even if I've gotten mad and said something really harsh, they know in a few minutes I'll come around and say, look, I'm sorry, that was dumb. Let's start over. So I'm predictable in that way. I'm also pretty predictable about how I'll respond from a correcting standpoint. That they know certain behaviors I'm not going to tolerate. You know, I'm going to come up and say something to them. So being very predictable, that's where, you know, that everything I'm going to talk about today, you know, it may sound, if you're sitting there, you may think, okay, all this sounds so kind of warm and fuzzy, but where's the firm part? You know, when do I be firm? And that's very important too. Kids need to know that there are limits. And so I think we do need to be able to and willing to approach them when they're acting bad and say something to them. I don't think you should let that go. You should go over and say, what's going on right now? You know, what do you need? These same things apply. Okay. Second pillar, so you got that. You got first pillar of trauma-informed care is safety. I guess I could wrap. You got them on your notes. Second one is, this is going to go fast. The second pillar is connections. And again, I was so pleased to see it on the website for Explore Austin that you understand. This whole organization has been built around this idea of connections. And again, I want to applaud you big time. You as mentors, something in you knew when you thought about how to give your time as a volunteer, where you want to plug in, something in you knew that this was really important, this organization and what you would be doing. And I think that's really, you need to be complimented. And I can tell as each of you came in, I got to meet you, you're good. You're the people who understand this connection piece. And it's vitally important. If you don't get anything, I'm going to give you a bunch of cute little phrases to say and things to do, questions to ask that'll be helpful to you. But if you forget all of that and you just go out on the next outing and you just think about how can I try anything that I can think of to connect with this person more, you'll be down the road. Because that's what they need. They just need you to be with them and get a sense that this guy or gal really wants to be around me. You know, they're really trying, even if you're just blundering around. You can't think, what did Randy say the other day? I can't think of it. But, you know. Okay, so connection. And again, some of the things, when we talk about connection, again, I put in the first sentence under this, that comfortable connections begin with felt safety. So if you don't have that safety, you got to build that. But then we're just talking about things like being a warm person, right? That's important for these youth that you work with. Eye contact, appropriate touch. Now that's a tricky one, you know, because I don't know what y'all talk about with mentors, but I'm a big believer. I've been in this business. I was in the business years ago when we were really learning about sexual abuse recovery, and everybody for a while freaked out about touch, man. It was like, no, I'm not touching anybody. So we went around kids in care, you know, like, oh, I can't touch you because you may misinterpret my touch. And I was always going, no. These kids need touch. They need an appropriate male like me to touch them appropriately. They do need that. So I was just big on saying, no, it can be an appropriate side hug or a handshake or something, but these kids need that touch. They need that. That communicates to them that I like you, I want to be around you, that you're a person of worth.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Would you say that appropriate touch helps with recovery for kids who may have been sexually abused in demonstrating kind of that, you know, a tap on the shoulder is okay, it doesn't have to be bad? I
absolutely believe that. Now, caveat, you got to be respectful. I mean, if the first time you're around them, you might actually say, is it okay if I give you a side hug or a high five or whatever? Or if you just do that, if you're in a group of kids and 3 of them high five you and the other one kind of pulls away, then just make note of that. Their behavior, one of my points in here is that every behavior they do communicates something to you about the relationship. So if you see them recoil from a touch, then don't touch them as much. But I still wouldn't give up on that. I would still figure out a way that they're comfortable with. Maybe it's a handshake. Kids used to laugh at me because they'd say, "Oh gosh, he's gonna want to shake hands." You know, when I'd come up to them, we'd be walking somewhere and they'd come past me. I'd reach out and shake their hand. You know, hey, and they were just like, but you could tell they appreciated it. They made fun of me, but they appreciated it. Most of them, as far as I could tell. So, yes, I believe that touch is extraordinarily important, particularly for a child who's been inappropriately touched. Mm-hmm. I mean, we are traumatized in a relationship and we are healed in relationship. It doesn't work that we're traumatized in a relationship and we're healed over in a classroom. That doesn't work that way. We're healed in relationship. And that's why you are such an important part of these kids' lives, because they need that the relationship they're having with you literally has the potential to heal them, to heal their brains, to rewire their brains. Okay, I'm probably overdoing that point. Third point is just, in this, there's the felt safety. They need to feel safe and start building trust. They need connections. That's how they do that. And then third is, and this is super important, that they've got to learn, we've got to help them learn impulse and emotion management, basically. Because when we're talking about that scale of 0 to 10, and they're at a 9 or 10, what we call that in technical terms is they're dysregulated, right? And we all know what that feels like. I mean, we all get dysregulated at times. But if you're a person who's had this, built this stuff, we get this reaction. Remember that we get dysregulated by these chemicals and these nerves going off, but we get regulated over here. So I may be like shoot up to a 10 because something's happened, again, maybe somebody steps out and is going to attack me or something. I may go to a 10, but I have the ability to calm myself, to say, okay, I can figure this out. At work, if something happens that really stresses me, I can say, okay, take a deep breath. I've got my strategies I do to get me back down to a 5 or 6 where I can function, where I can think. But when you're at an 8 or 9, the kids you're working with, when they are at an 8 or 9, this part of their brain is not working. That's, again, what we've learned scientifically. They're in the bottom part of their brain, and they're not able in that moment to think very well. So if you start talking a lot, for example, when a kid's really dysregulated, they're going to want to hit you or run from you. If you start giving a bunch of commands and talking a whole bunch, they're not going to respond well, most of them. So what I've always thought is, if you see somebody dysregulate a bunch, first, I get myself calm, and I get myself in a good body posture. Like I said, I went over and sat on the couch with that kid. And then I want to not say a lot of words. So I might just say, tell me what's going on when you're ready. And that's it. And then I'm not going to roll over and get right up in their face. I'm not going to do that. When they're dysregulated, you don't want close proximity. Most people don't. So I might even pull back from them a little bit, look across here, and just say, Laura, when you're ready, let's talk. And I'll just sit there and kind of look around. So that alone gives them the kind of the message that, okay, this person's safe. They're staying connected to me. Like, I don't go, whatever, and walk off, right? That's disconnect. That's telling her, oh, I don't like you. I don't like that behavior. And so her brain then goes into, I hate you. When we react bad to kids, what happens is all of their energy goes into disliking us or fighting us. Whereas if we take the posture I'm talking about, then their energy goes into their own thinking and decision making. So if I stay calm, I let them have a chance to use their voice. Not all of them will do it. It's not going to be the magic bullet. But your chances are much greater that they're going to talk to you, that they're eventually going to share with you. So, any questions so far? I know I'm throwing a lot. I hate to talk so much. I'd rather have more interaction with you. Any other questions come to anybody's mind as we've talked? Now I'm just going to talk about a few actual interactions.
I just have a question about, like, 2 of our girls who I know have experienced, trauma in their lives from their family. Their families have pulled them out of Explore Austin for other reasons. Yeah. And so it's like, and then, I felt like for a while the mentors kind of battled with the parents a little bit. Like, no, we'll pick them up. Right. It's important. And then maybe there was some like cultural insensitivity to that. But just that makes me sad that sometimes I feel like the girls who really could benefit the most, their parents are like, no, I don't want to drive her, I don't want to take her, or it's not even, it's like, and just any thoughts on that about how to have a conversation with the parents when the parents themselves have clearly, are in kind of a difficult circumstance.
Right. First of all, unfortunately, there are some we just can't reach.
Yeah.
If they're a parent, I would say the same thing about the parents that I would say about the youth.
Sure.
Respond to them in some of the ways I'm about to talk through.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing you're going to hear in almost all of what I'm about to tell you in terms of just responses you can have is this idea of empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Always start with empathy. So even with an adult, a parent who you're just like, you're such a jerk, because I have those feelings even as a trained person. I'm just like, I want to chest up to them sometimes, I really do. But if I'll just start with empathy, just say, wow, it must be really hard to get them here. So instead of going straight, what we want to do, and this is one of the techniques I was going to say to you, is don't rush to solutions. I'm terrible about that, like with my own wife and my kids sometimes. I want to go, I'm a solution guy. I want to figure this out. If you come to me and tell me a problem, I'm going to solutions. And I'm good at it. I can think fast, I can think big, but that's not what that person needs in that moment. So what that parent, the way I would address them is to pour on the empathy. Say, man, what's making it hard to get them here? It must be really tough. Boy, I really applaud you that you brought them for the first 3 weeks. That must have been tough for you. I didn't realize it was that hard. And then just stop. Because again, they may not respond to that well, but they might. The chances are greater that they will respond to something like that than if you go, well, we could come by and get them. And so what is a parent who's already feeling angry and, in a sense, like a loser parent? What do they feel when we start saying, we'll pick them up and we'll take them and we have a great time on our trips. They don't act out with me. What is that parent thinking when we're saying that?
Well, you're kind of like taking away their agency, or like you're not empowering them in that moment. You're not saying like I believe in your ability to parent. I'm saying like I'm kind of confirming like you're a really bad parent and thank God you have me.
That's exactly. Yes. Yeah. When they see us being overly positive about everything we're doing with their child. We can solve this for you immediately. I'm not saying we shouldn't say those things eventually to you. But in that moment, some parents are feeling very defensive. They already feel bad. And what I found with the hardest to work with parents in the world is at some point I see a glimpse that they really do care about their child. They want to be a good parent. Unless they are literally mentally ill, which sometimes I've run into that. But parents want to do a good job. They just don't know how, or they're stuck in a cycle of negativity. So anything we can do to pour on the empathy, to ask them, I would ask the question, what do you need from us? Sounds like you're thinking about pulling him out. And I think it's okay to say, it seemed like he was really enjoying this. We'd love to have him participate. What do you need from us? And just see what they say. They may say, well, what I need is, I need to take 3 weeks off, but maybe I can bring them back, or I need transportation. Let them tell you what they need. Instead of us saying, well, I know you need this, this, and this. Which is, again, back in the old days, that's how we were all trained. We're the experts, so we know exactly what you need. So let me tell you the list of things you need to do as a parent, as a child. And that doesn't work as well. Okay. Any other questions? All right. I'd rather talk in the midst of your questions probably and get the points across that way than going down the list. But let me start through this, because these are just some of the strategies that I wanted to talk through. Back on your second page, I think it is, under the pillar of impulse and emotion management, a couple of the things that I think are super important. We call it playful engagement, first of all. So, again, when you're out with some youth, I think the first thing to try when you're interacting with somebody who's kind of starting to spin off negatively is to try a playful engagement. Like, for example, if my sons walk in and they're really upset about something, and they come in and they're like tacky to me or my wife, the first thing I'll say is, you want to try that again with respect? And I try to smile. I try not to go, hey! That's what I want to do usually. But I try to have a voice, but I try to say, oh, wow. Do you want to try that again with respect? Why don't you? I even say kind of playfully, oh, man, why don't you go back down the hall and come out again and try that with respect? So see, I'm trying to be kind of lighthearted, but I'm still kind of letting them know that's not okay. And I have found 90% of the time, again, my kids are pretty well attached and all that. They'll catch themselves and go, oh, okay. They'll go back down the hall. They'll do it. I'm always amazed at that. But they'll go down the hall and they'll come back out, hey, Dad, even if they have to fake it at that moment, but they do it. And so, but that playful engagement, just figuring out ways to, you don't want to overplay that, like, be the comedian. If the kid's down, you don't want to keep doing it. But at least, I've found that that's a good way initially to just say, whoa, that's not how Explore Austin does it. I'm sure y'all have a few key phrases. I hope you do. A few key phrases you do, like we stick together, or teamwork matters. If you don't have those kind of phrases, I would encourage you to have those phrases where all of you kind of say that. We stick together. So when you've got a kid who's saying, I'm not going to help with that, we go, oh, wow. We stick together, right? Or we each carry our load, whatever that saying is, so that the kid knows, you're kind of calling them a little bit, but you can do it in a lighthearted, playful way with them. So that's one of the things I think when you're needing to sort of help them manage their emotions and get their dysregulation under control. The other thing is, we call it just offering a compromise. So if you've got a youth who's struggling with something, maybe you've said, let's sit down and talk, or there's a time where you're going to talk or whatever, and it's going to be, let's just say it's going to be 20 minutes, and they're sitting there like this. Maybe you can say, hey, do you want to compromise? And what if first you ask them that, and if they say yes, then you can say, what do you propose? And if they don't answer or they do, you can say something like, what if we only spent 10 minutes talking and the other 10 minutes we go paddle around there, or we walk down this path or something. So you just look for ways to compromise with them. Do you need a compromise? Do you want to do this a different way? So you're still kind of getting what you've asked them to do, but you're helping them realize that it's okay if they can't engage in the full thing we've asked them to do. Does that make sense? I know I'm flying through these explanations. Okay, so kind of starting down this list where I just said communication strategies. I think I've already said, well, the first one, pay full attention. Again, if you don't hear me say anything else today, if you'll do that one, it sounds so general and so like pay close attention. But what I'm saying is to truly be interested and inquisitive. I love the word inquisitive. It's like if we'll be inquisitive and interested in kids, it'll go so far. You don't need to necessarily know exactly how to say something or not, but if you'll just be interested. And so what that means in our world today is don't have your phone out looking at your phone when you're with the kids. I mean, be really attentive. Even like I can imagine when you're out on the river or whatever y'all are doing, some of you may have a lot of your own tasks, a whole list of things you got to get done. And you may get in a mode of just, I got to get through my list, So then you're like snapping at kids and come on, help, because you're frustrated. You're trying to get your part of it. At those moments, remember, if you've got a kid you all of a sudden notice is having a hard time, stop. Take your mind out of your checklist if you can. I mean, I know sometimes you can't. You may be having to hurry. But if you can, take time out of that checklist and stop and turn to that kid and go, hey, what's going on? Looks like you're having a hard time right now. Are you okay? What do you need? And sometimes they just, you'll hear from them. They'll be able to tell you, sometimes not. But just that being fully attentive to them. Now, I'm going to say some other things about that. That doesn't always look like this, because kids, they don't always need that intense front-on stare. Sometimes being attentive is literally, Laura's sitting on the side of the river, and I just come over and pop down beside her and go, man, I'm going to take a break from my chores for a minute. How you doing? And just be attentive to her, I saw you sitting over here. I was just wondering what's going on. Are you okay? What do you need? And just be that present adult to them, the adult that continually shows them that you care about them, that you're watching what they need and what they're doing. I had a friend that grew up in a children's home, and I asked him one time, he was going to come back to speak at a place where I work. He had lived at this children's home for 10 years, and he had ended up being an awesome adult and very successful. And I asked him, what I want you to come back and talk to our group about is the person or persons who made the difference for you. And so he told the story about this one guy who was not his, what we called home parent. It wasn't the one who lived with him. It wasn't the one who was with him a lot. But he said every day this guy, I think the guy was like a coach or something. I don't remember exactly what he was. But every day the guy, when he would see this friend of mine, he would walk up to him, shake his hand, put his hand on his shoulder, and he'd say, his name. Let's just say Laura. I'm picking on Laura a lot, but Laura, you're okay with me. You're going to do well. And he would just give him a side hug, say something like that, and then go on with their day. I mean, he might talk to him for a minute, but he literally said that guy, over time, that began to literally plant in his mind a vision that I really am going to be okay. You know? And he was in there with 3 other siblings and had a horrible situation. Felt totally responsible for his younger siblings, but he began to get a vision. And this guy ended up being the best man at his wedding and everything eventually. But it started just with that attentive kind of connection with him. So you may not even be kids that you're the direct mentor of that you're going to have the biggest impact on. Maybe somebody else's kid who you connect with just in those very short kind of ways. So next one, use conversation openers rather than conversation closers. I'm sure y'all talk a lot about this, but think about the words you use. So saying something like, you seem like you got angry when John took your paddle versus you need to share the equipment and try to get along with John. Just that little difference in wording. Do you hear the difference? I mean, have y'all found that useful? Have y'all found ways to use language like that? Can you give examples? I feel like I'm talking too much.
Well, I guess I'm still curious about my first question.
Yeah.
Because I feel like even within the mentor group, there's like the fun mentor, and so we're even in our own like patterns of like the one, and so I am very curious about just the dynamic of like the girls or the explorers who like do all the work and then the explorers who don't, and like, should I just be less concerned about it? Because I have empathy for the girls who are doing all the work because I like see myself in them.
Yes, right.
And so I'm kind of advocating for them.
Yes.
And so like I can see myself in a pattern, and how do I change that relational dynamic?
I always struggle with like a real direct answer, but several parts to my answer. Now, first of all, I would say I would not. Let me just put it what I would do. I'm not sure this is the perfect answer, but I would not let that go. Like I would not let the girls who are not helping. I would not address that.
Right.
I would address that, and I would do that in multiple ways. So it's not going to work just to have one thing you do, like walk up and go, y'all need to help, or that's not going to probably work, right? Yeah. I mean, you've probably maybe tried that. Yeah. So you've got to think about, when you answer a question like this, and this is, I encourage y'all as a team to do some of this, get together, kind of huddle up at times when you're not with the kids and talk about those kind of examples and say, how can we address this? So like I would do if I was the team lead, I would say, okay, we know we've got a group of 3 girls, I'm just making up this example, who don't typically help during getting the equipment ready, right? And then we've got 3 who help a lot, okay? So this week, when we get to the landing part to get the equipment ready, before we get there, I'm going to sit down with the team and we're going to say, hey, girls, here's your assignments. You 3 are going to come over here with me and help get the food ready or whatever. You 3 are going to get the equipment ready. And I would assign them to be the ones who get the equipment ready. So it's stuff, you can do things like that where you don't have to directly walk up when it's actually happening and go, So having a routine, thinking about your whole routine and intervening in that is really helpful instead of trying to intervene directly with kids. But in the moment, I would still, if you've tried that and it's still not working, then I would go over and I would do both. I would talk to the girls who are doing great and go over and say, hey, I so appreciate you helping out. Thank you. High five them, give them encouragement. And then I might actually tell them, I'd like you to go over and try something else and let's let some of these others help. And I'd let them hear that. If you have team meetings with the kids, I would get them together and say, hey, we got an issue. We've got some of us are helping and some are not. What do we want to do about that as a team? How do we want to handle that? And get the kids to put some pressure on you. Now, your helpers may go, oh, we're fine, we'll do it all. And then I would, as the adult, say, no, that's not, thank you for being willing to do that. But that's a rip-off to them because they're not getting to learn how to get the equipment ready. But being a good team member, and this is where I would have phrases. We stick together. We work as a team. Working as a team means everybody does their part. So, and if it kept not being improved, I would get a little more firm. I might even say, guys, guess what? We've talked about this several times. We're going to wait here until we get some cooperation from the team. So I want to see y'all work together to get the equipment ready.
Yeah.
And until we do that, we're not going to be able to get on the river today.
Because it is honestly painful when the girls are like, are just like totally dragging. And you're like,
yes.
And so, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. Does that go with it? I mean, James, I'm saying stuff. I hope that's not against what y'all have said.
No, it goes right along with it, actually. So, and we can talk a little bit after too, but we have some things in place that should help with that. Things like social contracts, expedition flags, job wheel for summer trips.
Yeah, and we do all those things for sure.
And I actually had a situation for me on a similar trip. I was making everyone's lunch every day because I thought I was being helpful. I was the kid who was over helpful. And one of the other kids talked to kind of, our instructor and said, I don't have a chance to shine. I can't even make my lunch because Christina's doing too much. And all they had to do was tell me, hey, you're not letting people have opportunities. Mm-hmm. So once I stopped, everyone just started doing their own stuff. And for me, it was an aha moment that my helpfulness isn't always helpful.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a private conversation with the other girls who were super helpful and giving them a 10-second rule where it's like, give someone 10 seconds to do their cleanup.
Yeah.
And then if no one does it, then you can step in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That was a big help for me,
That's
personally.
a great point.
See that?
Is it also, for me, everything's logical. So, I think of it as, if the job's going to get done and I can do it with the least amount of effort and all of these other people are going to do it, you could think to yourself, great, that suits me really well. But, the explanation that I would think of is, why does that not work? And, why is that not going to get these kids what they want long term? And it's because no one wants to have one-sided friendships where you have a friend that doesn't do anything. No one wants to have a partner where the partner doesn't do anything and sits on the couch while you make dinner and take out the trash.
Yes.
No one wants to have coworkers that act like that. So it's are they too young to understand, to see the bigger picture of why changing your behaviors will affect other parts of your life? And it's not just about the cleanup of dinner because, sometimes I'm tired at the end of the day and don't want to clean up dinner. And if I can outweigh other people at certain points, I'm great, I'm just too tired to do it. But if I look at the bigger picture, I'm more the person that helps out because that makes you better in all situations. It attracts people to you, I guess.
What you did to me, and help me if I'm getting off base here, Jane, what you just described is literally the core of this agency. It's the core of your mission. If you're just going out to do paddling, you're not doing anybody any good. Every interaction you have with youth on these trips should at least have the goal of helping lift all of them up in their social skills, their emotional reactivity, their learning how to regulate themselves, everything I'm talking about. Everything you're doing is to help with that. So yes, if you're not helping kids connect the dots, then you're not getting the depth of intervention you could with this work. So yeah, if you've got 3 girls doing it all and 3 girls getting away with it and you're never addressing that, you're missing a huge opportunity for growth for both of them. And I love that you said that because it's just as important for the ones who do everything to learn, I need to have boundaries too. I don't have to feel like I've got to bail everybody out. That's a codependent, I don't like that term, but that's kind of a codependent building kind of attitude. You want them to be able to be assertive and say, I'm willing to do my part, but everybody else needs to do their part. And the kids who aren't doing anything need to have enough self-respect and respect for the group to do their part. And that's all that teaching you're doing and helping them understand that. Now, the tricky part is you can't lecture that into them.
Yeah, I was going to say using logic, or just in my experience, because it's more about their power and autonomy.
Right. You want them to do...
And so if I'm not going to bridge that gap with using a logical explanation and how this will help them 40 years down the road. So
you should understand logic in the same way.
Yeah,
that's right.
I kind of figured that was going to be the case, but
I think it's just using, in my experience, we're trying to get an emotional behavioral change, and logic is maybe one component of it, but it's not the thing that they're oh right, okay, perfect. I'm going to go help out with dinner.
The way that's exactly right. So when you're together as the mentors, that's when you do your logic. You're thinking through, how do we use this next exercise to build some things into some of the kids? And as you get to know them, you can be specific. Yeah. We know John and Joe need to work on being more helpful. We know Sue and Susie need to work on being less helpful and more, whatever. And you think through that as a team, and then when you get there, you don't say a lot of words. So now sometimes when it's a calm moment, that's when you say, you guys did a great job working as a team. I noticed that so-and-so helped more than usual, and y'all really got together and got this done. You reinforce it. But in the moment, you figure out strategies that get them to do the thinking and the heavy lifting. That's the tricky part with working with anybody, adult and children, but particularly youth. That's why I think the techniques of using open-ended questions and leading with empathy are way more powerful than lecturing them. So, instead of going up to them and saying, you're being lazy and you're not doing your part, you come up to them and you sidle up beside them and you say, what do you think the team needs right now to get ready to go down the river? What are we needing right now? And what part do you think you can play? So you get them to do the thinking. You get them to say, oh, well, I guess I ought to help get things ready. And if they won't answer that, then maybe you take another step and say, until we get these paddles ready and all this, we're not going to be able to go. So what do you think you need to help? So, but then, having an overall approach with the whole group, too, can help with that. Having the time where you get together and say, the last few times we've gone, it's taken us an hour to get ready. How can we speed that up? And then get them to kind of gen ideas about how to do that. So I know we're about out of time. Let me just close with saying, again, I hope I gave you enough explanation under these things to read them and get a little bit out of them. But the main thing, they're a little bit repetitive in that two things. One, helping them raise their voice, use their voice. So again, any question you ask, make sure it's an open-ended question that invites them to do the majority of the talking, not you. So if they're not talking, if they're sitting here like this, then I'm not going to go just do a bunch of talking at them. I may just go and ask an open-ended question and then just let it float out there, okay? The other thing that I think is hugely important is leading with empathy. Practice your empathy. So even if you're really frustrated with a kid, go up to them and say, it looks like, you may be angry right now, or it looks like you are having a hard time getting engaged with the group. And just let that sit there. And deal with your own anxiety about it. I really want you to get, but again, give the youth time to sort of let that soak in. And typically they will open up more if we show empathy toward them versus if we lecture them or give them commands or whatever. Any last questions?
I had a last thought.
Yes.
One thing we do kind of have in the program is we don't just have a team of kids, we have a team of mentors too.
Yes.
Your dynamic is just as important as a mentor team as the kids' dynamics are with each other. So whatever you do is really a model. It's an example for the kids. So if you see that your kids aren't very likely to help out with doing dishes, maybe Caroline asks Alan, hey Alan, can you help me with the dishes? And you show them that it's okay to ask for help. You show them that it's okay to volunteer for it, and just use that as a tool.
That is a great, fantastic. Absolutely. I mean, if they see, and this happens a lot, having worked with a lot of people who work with children, we'll be at an event, I'll look up as a leader and I'll see I've got 3, in y'all's case it's mentors, working their rears off, and I've got 3 standing over here talking, and they've been talking for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
And the kids are going to mock, they're going to, see that as their example. So yeah, as a leader, I'm going to go over and say, hey guys, y'all need to be modeling this to the kids. Let's go. Let's do this. Or when y'all are meeting as a team to figure that out. And 2, just how you respect each other and ask, again, asking each other open-ended questions, kind of having that culture that is about, I'm really interested in what's going on with you, and I'm interested in your growth. You're improving yourself. That's what this whole thing's about. Again, it's not just about going out and having fun doing an adventure. We're all here to lift ourselves, to be transformed. Even on the website, the description of the mentor, 2 out of the 3 things it says about you is that you're going to grow. You're going to grow as you work with these kids.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all being transformed. So I think you ought to be talking about that openly. Guys, we're all here to get better as leaders, as group members, as team members, and ultimately as family members, husbands, wives, whatever. We're all here to improve in that. And right now, we're not acting in a way that looks like we're doing that. I mean, I would say that kind of stuff. So how are we going to do? But I would say it with hopefully an uplifted spirit and not like, dadgummit, y'all. If you have that tone of voice, they're just going to be like this. They're not going to hear another word I say. You might as well stick the fingers in their ears. But if I can come at it like, okay, guys, I'm tired too. Let's, we're not looking like a very good team right now. Let's get together and make this happen. And I understand that you're really tired right now. It's been a long day. Again, pour on the empathy, but then encourage them to step up as well. So,
I thought of one tiny more thing. Sorry.
Yes.
Another, I think, key aspect of being a leader, because we're in a leadership program, is being a follower. You can't be a good leader without knowing how to follow. And that's a little tidbit I come in on all the time. So I just wanted to make sure that got on the video. That's all.
Absolutely.
Followership precedes leadership.
Thank you for letting me be here today. Again, thank you, mentors, for the work you do, and staff for supporting them. It's fantastic work. Keep it up. Thank you.
I feel so informed.
Cool. Thank you guys so much for coming. I know, most of you are sneaking away from work for a little bit or whatever. Feel free to